January 3rd, 2012, Modimolle, Limpopo Province, South Africa. A woman pulls up to a house that she knows all too well. Her ex-husband called earlier saying he still had one last box with her belongings. She'd already been here twice to collect her stuff, but he keeps finding excuses. Just one more thing, he says. She parks outside the gate. She doesn't want to go in. He comes out, and they talk briefly. It's really hot, a typical South African summer's day. She asks for water. He invites her inside. She hesitates, but then she thinks, it's just for a second. This is her ex-husband after all, the stepfather to her son. Surely it's safe. The moment she steps through that door, her life changes forever. He throws a towel over her head and drags her to a bed, and from a cupboard where they've been hiding, 3 men emerge. This is the case of Ina Bonette and the man the media would call the Modimolle Monster, one of the most sadistic cases of DV and revenge in South African history. Ina Bonette is a divorced mother of 2 living in Modimolle, Limpopo. Modimolle is approximately a 2-hour drive from Johannesburg. I have never actually been there, but apparently it is known for its agriculture and also many beautiful game lodges. Ina lives there. She was in her 40s, working hard, raising her kids. Life hasn't been easy, but she's making it work. And then she meets Johan Kotze. Born in 1961, Johan is a white Afrikaner man with a farming background. He's charming, attentive, tells Ina she's beautiful and that he's been waiting for someone like her his whole life. They start dating, and Johan showers her with affection. He love bombs her. He's everything that she has ever wanted, or so it seems. In October 2010, just over a year after they met, Ina and Johan got married. And almost immediately, things started to unravel. The control started subtly. Johan wanted to know where Ina was at all times. Who she was talking to, what she was doing. He'd call her constantly. 154 phone calls and 184 text messages between November 2011 and January 2012 alone. That's obsessive even by clingy ex standards. He was so jealous and extremely possessive. And then came the verbal abuse. He'd belittle her in front of others, blame her for everything wrong in his life. According to Ina's later testimony, Johan claimed she'd forced him to sell his farm in Bloemfontein to marry her, though there's no evidence that she ever asked him to do that. He would say that she and her family belittled him. Within just 5 months of marriage, Ina realized that this was not going to work, and she left him in 2011. But Johan, he wasn't going to let her go that easily. Oh no. After Ina left, Johan became fixated on revenge and he began stalking her. According to phone records, Johan had been in contact with a man named Andries Sitole since late December 2011. Between the 20th of December and the 3rd of January, Johan called Andries 40 times. Andries called him back 8 times and tried an additional 36 times. Why were they talking so much? Because Johan was planning something. Johan also stayed in close contact with his friend and landlord Dirk van der Merwe, who owned the property that Johan was renting in Modimolle. On the morning of January 3rd, 2012, Dirk came over for coffee. Johan told him that he was just tired and he had been watching Ina. He said he didn't like what he saw, but he didn't really know what that meant. It could have meant a lot of things. Johan also mentioned that he had this business in Hammanskraal and he needed to pick up his daughter Jo Marie in Pretoria later that day. Everything just seemed normal. Before Ina arrived, Johan made a call to Dirk. He asked him to remove some palm trees from near the house, and he said not to worry about the labor because he had already hired 3 men off of the street to help with it. So 2 of the men went with Dirk to replant these trees, but Johan kept André Sitole behind. Then he called Dirk again and insisted that he return with the other 2 men, Pieter Moklake and Frans Mpaka. Once the job was done, Dirk did just that. Even though he thought it was a bit odd, he still complied. What he did not know was that Johan had just positioned 3 men inside his house waiting for Ina to arrive. January 3rd, 2012, around midday, Johan called Ina. He said he had one last box of her belongings. She'd been to the house twice already to collect her things, but he kept on insisting that there was more. Ina drove to the house, parked outside the gate, and Johan came out. They talked and everything was fine, and she asked for water because it was really hot that day. Ina walked through the front door, and immediately Johan threw a towel over her head and shoved her onto a bed. The 3 men, Andries, Pieter, and Frans, emerged from the cupboard. Ina tried to scream. She kicked. She fought. But Johan sat on top of her, pinning her down. He shouted for the other men to help him. They tied her hands to ropes that had been pre-fastened to the windows and bars and bed frame. This was not a crime of passion. This was premeditated. They taped her mouth shut so tightly she could barely breathe. And then the torture began. For nearly 3 hours, Johan Kotze tortured Ina Bonette. He used tools from a cupboard, nails, screwdrivers, pliers, and a grinder. He SA'd her with these objects. He mutilated her breasts and cut off one of her nipples. And the entire time, he screamed at her, blamed her for everything, said she'd ruined his life, that she had forced him to sell his farm, that she and her family had belittled him. Ina later testified, the more that she shook her head to show that it wasn't true, the more he would assault her. And at one point, Johan told her, "Today, you are going to feel what it's like to be effed by K-words." Now, let me just tell you, the K-word I am talking about is something I cannot and will never say. But all you need to know about it is that it is a disgusting racial slur in South Africa. It really is a despicable word that is filled with hate and nobody should ever say it. But anyways, then he ordered the 3 men to rape her. All 3 of them did, while Johan watched. Ina begged them with her eyes to help her. But they didn't, and they did not stop. After the rape, Johan told the men to leave. He dressed Ina and sat with her, as if everything was normal. He then told her that if her son, Conrad, showed up at the house, he would force her own son to rape her at gunpoint. And if he refused to do it, he would kill him. And then they heard a motorbike pull up outside. Ina's 19-year-old son, Conrad Bonette, had come to check on his mom. Reportedly, Johan had somehow lured him there, and he was concerned about his mom. He walked down the hallway, and then Ina heard his voice. "No, uncle, please don't." "No, uncle, please don't." Another shot, and then a 3rd shot. Silence. Ina couldn't scream. Her mouth was still taped shut. She couldn't move. She was still tied to the bed. Her son, her baby, had just been murdered in the next room, and there was nothing that she could do about it. After murdering Conrad, Johan called Dirk van der Merwe. He was crying. He said he no longer wanted to live and that Dirk would never ever see him again. Then the coward fled. Hours later, Dirk's wife Vivian arrived at the house at Dirk's request. He'd asked her to go and check on things after Johan's disturbing phone call. She found one of the workers, Martinus Klute, outside. He told her that he had seen some movement inside one of the bedrooms. Vivian walked in and found Ina tied to the bed. Her breasts were exposed. There was blood on her nipples. Her mouth was still taped shut. Vivian used a side cutter, one of the tools that Johan had used to torture Ina, to free her. Ina immediately ran to the next room. There, she found Conrad's body. He'd been shot 3 times, once in the knee, twice in the torso. Ina screamed, "He killed my son. Get me out of here. If Kotze comes back, he'll kill all of us." The 3 of them, Ina, Vivian, and Martinus, rushed to the Modimolle police station. Ina was taken to the hospital where she underwent multiple surgeries and was placed on an anti-HIV medication as a precaution. For 8 days, Johan Kotze was South Africa's most wanted man. His photo was circulated nationwide. Interpol got involved. The Hawks, South Africa's elite investigative unit, private security companies, the public, everybody was looking for the Modimolle Monster. On the night of January 11th, 2012, Johan was spotted at a Duggan supermarket and bakery in Modimolle, trying to buy food. Members of the public immediately recognized him. He sped off in his white Toyota Fortuner, but it was raining heavily and he lost control. The car crashed into a tree and Johan fled on foot, bruised and bleeding. The next day, January 12th, 2012, he showed up at Dirk van der Merwe's house in Drie Hekke. He was exhausted and desperate. He asked Dirk for help, but Dirk, who'd been part of an armed neighborhood watch group helping the police track Johan, immediately called the authorities. Police arrived and arrested Johan Kotze on the spot. The trial began in late 2012 at the Pretoria High Court. Johan Kotze, Andre Sitole, Pieter Moglake, and Francis Parker were charged with the murder of Conrad Bonette, kidnapping, 4 counts of rape, assault with intent to cause grievous bodily harm, and attempted murder. Johan refused to enter a plea. The court entered a plea of not guilty on his behalf. His 3 co-accused also pleaded not guilty, claiming that Johan had forced them at gunpoint to participate. They said they'd only pretended to rape Ina because they couldn't get erections. The court didn't buy it. Ina took the stand, and for hours she recounted every horrifying detail of what Johan had done to her. She testified about the torture, the rapes, hearing her son beg for his life. At one point, she broke down and had to leave the courtroom because she just fell ill. Johan's defense lawyer, Piet Greiling, tried to argue that Johan suffered from psychological problems and shouldn't be held accountable for this. But the evidence was just too overwhelming. Phone records showed that Johan had been planning this for weeks. The ropes had been pre-tied to the bed. The tools had been laid out in advance. This was without a doubt premeditated revenge. Another difficult moment of the trial came when Johan's 18-year-old daughter, Jo Marie Kotze, took the stand. She testified that she spent Christmas with her dad and had plans to visit him again on January 3rd, the exact day that he tortured Ina and killed her son. A day or 2 before the attack, Johan had called her actually and told her a story about catching Ina with another man. He said he was very disappointed and extremely hurt. Jo Marie advised him to just end the marriage and move on. She said he just sounded like he agreed with her and would do that. But clearly, he had other plans. After testifying, Jo Marie broke down crying. She asked if she could hug her father. At first, the court orderly refused, but eventually they allowed it. Johan stood there, consoling his sobbing daughter in his arms, as if he hadn't just been convicted of murdering a teenager and torturing a woman for 3 hours. The cognitive dissonance is staggering. On July 15th, 2013, acting judge Bert Bam found all 4 men guilty. Johan Kotze was convicted of murder, life sentence, 4 counts of rape, life sentence, kidnapping, 10 years for that, assault with intent to cause grievous bodily harm, 15 years. He received 2 life sentences plus 25 years altogether. Andri Sitole received the same sentence. Peter Mukhlake and Frans Mpaka each received life sentences for rape plus 18 years for kidnapping and assault. During sentencing, Judge Bam noted that none of the men had shown any remorse. Later, all 4 men applied for leave to appeal, and Judge Bam denied every single application, saying that there was no prospect of success. Johan Kotze is currently serving his sentence at Zonderwater Prison, a high-security facility in Gauteng. He'll likely never see freedom again. I, for one, would be outraged if he was ever released. This is such a twisted, disgusting individual. He is dangerous and should never be allowed out after what he did. In the weeks after the attack, Ina Bonette did something incredible. She started speaking publicly about what had happened to her. In March of 2012, just 2 months after the attack, Ina delivered her first motivational speech at a music festival in Modimolle. That's pretty inspiring. She also wrote a book in Afrikaans titled Ina, a verhaal van genade en genesing, which means a tale of mercy and healing. She became an advocate for survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. And through it all, she raised her surviving daughter, Angelique, who was just a teenager when her brother was murdered. Ina has said that her peace came through faith and forgiveness, not for Johan, but for herself. She refused to let him destroy her twice. Conrad was laid to rest on January 13th, 2012 in Bella Bella, South Africa. Hundreds attended his funeral. Ina still visits his grave regularly, often with Angelique by her side. This case sent shockwaves through South Africa. I actually remember hearing about it when it happened. The brutality, the premeditation, the fact that Johan Kotze had used racial hatred as a weapon against his own ex-wife. It also raised questions about DV in South Africa, where femicide rates are among the highest in the world. According to South African Police Service statistics, a woman is killed by her intimate partner every 3 hours in South Africa. That's shocking. Ina's case became a symbol of survival, of refusing to be silenced, of fighting back when the world feels like it's ending. And Johan Kotze, he became a symbol of something else. The kind of evil that hides behind charm. The kind of monster that looks like a normal man until you get too close. He's exactly where he belongs, behind bars for the rest of his life. If there's anything to take away from this case, it's this. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. And if you or someone you know is in an abusive relationship, please reach out for help. You are not alone. This case honestly just gave me a lot of anxiety, but I'm so inspired by Ina and her strength. I'd like to conclude today's video actually and leave you with some incredible words from Ina.
Ek kies lewe. Dit maak nie saak of jy 1000 maal geval het nie, maar as jy 1001 keer bereid is om op te staan, as jy daai keuse kan maak, is daar hoop. En as daar hoop is daar oorwinning. En as daar oorwinning is daar genesing.